Hey, y'all. Welcome to Shade and the City. It's your girl Treese here. And as promised, I told y'all I was going to spin a block to give you Beyond the Gates Season 1, Episode 114. So this was Monday's episode. Welcome you guys for all of my BTG Shade Squad. If you haven't already, please do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you are liking the vibe as a new viewer, please go ahead and join us. It's a whole community, it's a whole family over here. Please go ahead and subscribe, all right? Y'all, let's get right into it because I already gave y'all a little bit in 113 of how I felt about 114. So let's go ahead and get into it. And let's get shady. All right, y'all. So we kick it off with Leslie, of course, is still in disbelief hearing that, she's Barbara's daughter and about to inherit all this money. However, she thinks Peaches is playing with her and thinks that it's a scheme that Nicole set up to come to us with the bullshit. Okay. However, and she tells Peaches that look, I know a hustle when I see one because I'm a hustler, homie. I'm a hustler. I'm a hustler. Okay. And so Peaches said, look, I don't know who you're talking about, but please let's sit down. Let's talk about this Nicole girl because I don't know nobody named Nicole. Okay. And I want to know why you think she sent me. So Pick Six explains how she showed up at the Articulate concert. And she thinks that Nicole is on some get back because she felt like she shouldn't have been there. And so Peaches said, look, I don't know that girl, but either way, you're rich, bitch. Okay. And so she said, so don't worry about her, okay? And so Pick Six talks about, the days of ramen noodles, and y'all are going to probably get a really good kiki out of this. I was ready to come up here and sing Luther talking about ramen noodles, drop it like it's hot, only to realize, and thank God I looked up the lyrics, that said Roman numerals. See how black people make things what they wanted to be? Because that man ain't say nothing about no ramen noodles. Okay. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. So anyway, so she talks about the days of ramen noodles and avoiding bill collectors. So Peachy says that when the doctor, gave her diagnosis or whatever, she wanted to make a point to make sure she shared the news with her. And then she even goes as far as to pull out receipts. Okay. And so Pick Six is still thinking this can't be real. This is I didn't fake things myself, and I feel like they gave us a nugget. I don't know if anybody else caught that, but she was like, "Oh, those documents can be faked. I've done that too." Because I know some of y'all have been saying it since this whole Eva thing has come out that y'all don't think Eva is really his child, and we know she's the one that got the DNA test and called in the favor. So now I'm starting to believe y'all because they didn't drop that nugget for no reason. Okay. So even though we know she's a scammer, so she could have been talking about anything, but so Peaches said, look, I'm too old and too tired to be going back and forth with you. And she said, look, the money came about because and we don't know who's funding it. It's in a trust for your mother, and you just happen to be one of the descendants and ain't nobody else living. And so yeah, and whoever's funding it a secret. Ain't nothing we can do about it. Then she gives her this hairbrush that Barbara had when she was a little girl. And apparently they've already done the DNA match to confirm that she is absolutely Barbara's daughter. So I said, well, I guess we cleared that up, unless Mama Peaches is a scammer too. I don't know. But she says she's about to go from being a have-not to having it all. And I said, well, if they ain't trying to give Tyler Perry a shout out, okay. So meanwhile, over at Nicole's, her and Vanessa are tipsy. Nicole tells Vanessa that she's worried about her and Doug, and she's I ain't trying to throw no more divorce parties anytime soon. So Vanessa said, look, you killing the vibe, okay? And so Nicole switches it up and said, okay, let's talk about Joey then. And so she said, "Look, Joey is not somebody that you want to play with." And so Vanessa's like, no shade, Nicole. I know we cool and all, but why is it every time we get together now, Joey's name is in your mouth? I'm starting to feel like maybe you feel. Are you obsessed with Joey? Do we need to have a conversation, sis? Okay. And so she said, "Look, the only thing between me and Joey is an escrow." Okay. And so Nicole said, "Girl, I don't believe you. I've known you too long, and Joey is very dangerous." And so then Vanessa looks at her and said, "Well, how do you know that? What do you possibly know that would make you think that he was dangerous?" And I said, "Mm." And so then, of course, conveniently, they're interrupted by a phone call that Nicole gets. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I got to go meet with my colleague down at the Uptown." Vanessa tells her that Doug is there. So Vanessa's like, "Oh, well, Doug is over there as well because, I've been tracking him ever since he went rogue." So she said, well, so Nicole was like, "Cool, we can order a car and then we can ride together and talk more about Joey." Vanessa's like, that sounds so exciting. So then Ted, I love this scene. I ain't even gonna hold you. Ted runs into Doug at Uptown and he's like, "What's good, brother?" Doug said, "I am not your brother." Okay. He said, "Brothers wouldn't question my skills." So Ted admits, "Look, I may have came in a little hot and I could have handled it better." And he said, "But look, I was trying to look out for you for real." And I asked the chief, like, "Let me just handle it in house." And Doug was like, "See, that's the problem. I ain't need you to handle it because I got this already." He said, "I just had a bad day, my dude." So Ted's like, "Look, I know, we both been taking L's lately." And Doug was like, "What you talking about? I'm good. Technically, I'm retired at this point, and Joey is paying my bills. So I don't, and Vanessa, I don't know what you talking about, Ted." So then Ted said, "Look, Nicole done filed for divorce." And so Doug said, "Well, damn, homie, I'm my condolences to your marriage. Because that's about to end. That's about to be ashes to ashes and dust to dust." So Ted ponders on the fact that, it's so crazy to me how I could sit and, reconstruct and give people a whole new face, but I can't manage to make my wife look at me the way she used to. I said, "Oh, that's deep. That's deep. Because you ain't dead. That's why." So Doug suggests that, it might not be as complicated as it seems, and tells him you need to identify what's blocking your blessings and eliminate it by any means necessary, right? So then, of course, don't be by any means necessary. And Deputy Dogood walks up. Um, and so Doug goes off to talk to Deputy Do Good alone. And Doug asks him, do you know who Marcel Malone is?" And so Jacob was like, "I wish I didn't, but yeah, that's my partner. I don't really trust his ass, but yeah, I work with him." And so he said, "Look, I know he dirty. Um, and that's not how I roll. I'm very law and order. I'm out here doing good. All right." And so Doug says, "Look, I know that you are the right person to help my friend who has a problem with his employer, who happens to be Joey Armstrong." Okay. Now we see Ashley. She's at the hospital pacing back and forth, waiting for Derek to come out of recovery. And Shanice is like, "Girl, just go home." And so, but Ashley is like, "No, I can't go until I see Derek." So then so then Ashley mentions to Shanice how Dr. Madison mentioned that he was going to need intensive therapy, and asks Shanice if basically she'll be his physical therapist. And she's asking her, "Well, do you think he's ever going to recover?" And Shanice is like, "First of all, we ain't even got our hands on him yet, but of course I'm gonna push him to his limits and beyond." And so, she's like, he needs us both." And so Shanice tells her, "Look, yeah, we had our differences in the past, but the common goal is to get Derek back on his feet, literally." Okay. And then that's when Madison comes in and interrupts and tells Ashley that she can go see Derek. So now Eva shows up at Leslie Pick Six apartment, concerned because of a text she received. And so Pick Six is like, "Oh, so you remember Barbara that they was honoring at the tribute at the concert?" And Pick Six tells her, "Well, you know what? That's my mama. Can you believe that? I always love my mama. She's my favorite girl." Like that's what and so Eva's like, "You know what? You completely have lost your mind on this one." And so then Leslie is like, "Hey, other mama, Peaches." She calls Peaches out to meet her granddaughter. And so Eva is confused as hell as to what's going on. And Peaches gives her the rundown on the pick six and who her mama was. And Eva is just still like, this is a lot. Okay. And so she said, girl, we about to level up. Okay. Where there was no way, he made a way. Okay. We about to level all the way up. And so Peaches said, well, you know what? I'm about to go. Um, and she lets Pick Six know that, look, girl, even though your mama gave up on you, wanted nothing to do with you, and then unalived herself, there's a blessing somewhere in this. And I said, I guess if that's how you want to deliver it. And y'all know sometimes I put 20 on 10 and like I do my own interpretation. There really wasn't that much difference in what I said and what she said. Okay. The delivery was not there. Okay. Um, so then Pick Six tells Peaches that if she needs anything, just let me know. And so Eva tells her, well, oh yeah, I need a grandmother in my life, and they hug it out. And after she leaves, I thought it was really cute. Leslie looks at her and she's like, so are you in my dreams or am I in yours? I thought it was really cute. And they get really excited. And Eva's like, oh, so are we really rich? And I love when she was like, this whole we conversation, because we talked about that on Friday as well. You keep saying we, and I absolutely was like, oh, Pick Six is gonna leave this girl in the dust. She only called her when she needed. She already kicked her out. And maybe that was part of the bigger plan. I don't know. But yeah, no. And so, but she's like, but they laugh it off and they continue to celebrate that they're in the money. Jacob lets Doug know. I know who Joey is, and he moves around like, he's bulletproof or whatever. And so Doug said, I want to prove that he ain't. So Deputy Do Good said, look, I can only participate if we're doing good. All right. And so Doug tells him, look, my friend has some information about Joey that might interest you. And so he's like, oh. And so Deputy Do Good thinks, well, that's cool. We can make Brandy, Sammy, because we know who that's Doug talking about, an informant and help the department. And Doug said, we ain't got no time for that. Okay. We need Joey gone now. And I said, well, Mr. Do Good don't know how to not go by the book. So he's like, well, and then he said, well, we'll proof that Joey asked my friend to commit unalive do the trick. So Deputy Do Good warns Doug, hey, I'm here to do good. All right. Anything you tell me will be used in an official investigation. Okay. So Doug said, look, that's what I want. And he said, my friend plans to go talk to Naomi for a plea deal. So Doug is just focused on, what do you need to take Joey off the streets, right? And that's when Vanessa walks up and interrupts their meeting. And as we see Ted looking longingly in the distance in the background, because of course we see Nicole has entered the building as well. However, Nicole is there to actually meet up with Madison. Because she says that she's a little concerned that she's a little too emotionally involved. And she knows that she's not supposed to be. And was anybody else confused by this scene? Is it me? Okay. All right, let's go back over to Garland Memorial, where Ashley, she goes to check on Derek, and he's high off the anesthesia, but he tells Ashley that he feels a tingling. And he blames that on, the anesthesia and the fact that he can't feel his legs. So he asks Ashley, he's like, can you touch my legs for me? And he realizes, so he insists that she does it and realizes that he can't feel anything. And so Ashley is trying to explain to Derek, like, what's going on, without telling him that, basically he might be paralyzed. And she was like, what was this whole thing about? And sliding to the left and sliding to the right, like you was skiing, but you was riding a bike, my brother. Like, what was going on? It's like, and why you hit it so fast, And so as she's trying to get information from Derek, Shanice comes in and interrupts and lets him know that, look, I'm gonna be the physical therapist moving forward. I got you. And so Derek is like, oh shit. I'm a lucky man. Lucky is how I feel. I get to look back at that booty every time I work out. I am, to God be the glory. Okay. And so, and then of course Shanice lets him know that, Ashley put in a special request for him. So Then we go back to this very weird conversation where Madison is telling Nicole how she's concerned about messing up on the job because she's so connected to her emotions lately. And so Nicole is like, well, has anything changed lately? And Madison says Chelsea. And so Nicole was like, well, what about Chelsea? And she's like, oh, I'm just, she's the problem because I'm just so in love with her and it scares me. And I said, this needed to be a therapy session? Like for you to, okay, moving along. Moving along. Is it me? Okay. Um, and so Nicole assures her that, look, Madison, you're brilliant, you're good at your job, you can compartmentalize when you need to, and said that, however, I got something to say that you might not like. And really, she really didn't say nothing, but oh yeah, it's absolutely okay. And it might be good for you and your patients to get emotionally connected. So I was like, we couldn't have had this conversation down at the hospital. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So yeah. Now Vanessa done sat down and had a seat with Jacob and Doug. And so Doug is like, well, I thought you was hanging out with Nicole. And she's like, no, Nicole had her meeting. You see her over there talking to Madison. And she said, but I really want to know what's going down here. Okay. So Vanessa's asking for answers from Deputy Dogood and Doug. And Jacob said, you know what? This ain't my business. This is married people business. Y'all talk that out. I'm getting ready to go. Remember what we discussed, and I'll holler at you later, brother. And so Vanessa is begging Doug to tell her. And Vanessa's like, please, please, please tell me that you was not up here talking to this man about Joey. Please. I done already saved your life once. Please tell me that's not what you was doing. All right. And so then we see this actually was a funny scene to me. Deputy Dogood walks up and he approaches Ted and he's like, oh, so was there any more drama with Leslie since the whole off Jeans incident? And Ted was like, nah, but she stole a ticket to the Articulate concert. And Jacob was like, well, yeah, petty theft is not really, even though I'm technically on desk duty, petty theft, because I thought about that and I said, well, didn't your daddy put you on desk duty and told you to leave these cases alone? So what are you doing? But okay, I'm gonna be quiet. Yeah, Jacob said petty theft isn't on his priority list, and right now he has bigger fish to fry than Ted's baby mama drama. And I said, well, talk about being helpful. Now, I guess Jacob had bigger fish to fry because he was running over to Garland Memorial, and then he spots Ashley, and she forewarns him that, look, Derek is in denial, and he may not be the same person that we know again. Okay, and so Jacob goes in to see Derek, and he tells him, like, look, Naomi sends her love, and she's gonna stop by later. And so Derek explains how he took the turn too quick and he messed himself up. And so Jacob was like, well, is there anything I can do for you, Derek? And Derek said, I just want to get my bike back so I can get back on it. Okay. Okay. All right. So as Ted's watching Nicole and Madison in the distance, we see Peaches roll up, okay, wanting to have a drink. She's trying to, engage with him, and he's kind of like not really paying her no attention. But she comes over and introduces herself, and she said, she's like, why you over there looking like a dog who can't go home? And so he explains, like, that's my wife, and basically she don't want me no more, and I don't know what to do. And so meanwhile, Peach is like, well, I know how you feel, because I just, I'm out here trying to make up with my daughter. We ain't got the best relationship either. Little do you know, her daughter is the same woman that is brought just terrible turmoil and detriment to your life. Now Peaches encourages him, well, you know what? You need to go after what you want. Go get what you want. Don't wait for fate to push their hand. And I said, at least she can give some good advice. As Madison and Nicole are ending their meeting, Ted walks up to her, and so Ted walks up to Nicole and says hi, and she's like, oh, I saw you with your new bar companion. And she was like, thank you for taking my advice and moving on. So Ted said, look, I am not picking up random seniors at the bar, okay? Even though she looked young in the face and she got on a salt pepper Eloise wig, that's not what I'm doing. So he apologizes for overreacting to the country club the other day, with Carlton. And he said, I was a little thrown off by the divorce papers. And Nicole said, oh, like I was finding out about my husband's secret love child. And I said, checkmate. Checkmate. I played chess. That was a checkmate. Okay. And so Ted said, "Can you please not make this into a competition?" And she tells him, "Look," she tells him that ended a long time ago, and since it's looking like a blowout. I said, "Just walk away, Ted. Just walk away." Okay. So even Leslie are talking about this money that they plan to get. And Leslie says that she plans to use the money to give Peaches basically the best care she can. And then it goes into a whole conversation about how you got to take care of your mama, right? So then this was the sad part. I said this did kind of hurt my heart a little bit. Dr. Madison goes to see Derek and update him on his condition. She lets him know that the surgery did go well. And Derek asks, "Well, when can I get out of the hospital?" And Madison explains, my boy, it's gonna take a couple weeks of recovery, and you're gonna leave here in a wheelchair. Okay. Or you're gonna leave here in a wheelchair, my dude. And so Derek starts to realize, oh, so I'm a firefighter. I'm not gonna be able to do my normal firefighting things. And so Ashley starts to get emotional because she's in the room, and Derek finally basically is realizing that he really put himself up. And I said, "Oh, that is just so sad." But yeah, y'all, that was episode 114 of Beyond the Gates. Let me know your thoughts in the chat or comments. If you haven't already, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Please make sure, if you're not already, that you subscribe. Make sure you comment and hit the notification bell. And make sure you're following us on all the platforms. That's the TikTok, the Twitter, the Facebook, the IG, the Blue Sky. And did I say that already? And the Lemonade, y'all. And yeah, I will catch y'all tomorrow for episode 115. Jeez, we are 115 episodes in. This is nuts. But anyway, y'all, thank you. Have a good night. Bye bye.